I now call to order the Tuesday, June 11th, 2019 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Item 2, public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the Planning and Zoning Commission with regard to either item 3 or 5? Item 4 is scheduled for public hearing, so if you want to speak on that item, you can speak at that time. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item 3, the minutes. 3A, consideration of an action on the minutes of the May 23rd, 2019 meeting. Does anyone have any changes to make? Okay. Okay, Commissioner Simeon made a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stevens. Is there any discussion? We can go ahead and vote. Your mouse doesn't cooperate with you. Okay. It's approved. We will move on to item 4, the public hearing. 4A, receive and hear all persons desiring to be heard on the proposed map amendment to the City of Sugar Land Master Thoroughfare Plan.
Good evening, Commission. I'm Kieran Baugh, a senior planner with the Planning Department, and I'm delighted to be here this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't hear me. Okay, Kieran Baugh, senior planner with the Planning Department. I'm delighted to be here this evening to present to you the proposed map amendment to the Master Thoroughfare Plan, along with Tim John, Assistant City Engineer. So as a brief outline for tonight's item, I will review the history and background, and Tim would join me here, and he would go through the updates of the map, and then I would close out with the next steps recommendation in holding the public hearing. So the Master Thoroughfare Plan is one of the 8 official city master plans, and each of the master plans are elements of our comprehensive plan. The master plans, they document policy direction for all 8 of the master plans, and the Master Thoroughfare Plan was last updated in 2012. There is a process that the city go through to regularly update and maintain the comprehensive plan, and this is part of the Sugar Land Way. The Master Thoroughfare Plan, at the time of update, they looked at major infrastructure improvements, and more improvements have occurred since the last update in 2012. In providing your brief background of what occurred during the 2012 update, that plan looked at short and long-term growth impacts within the city and from around the region on our transportation system. It was also a comprehensive update to the city's major street network that included major and minor collectors, arterials, state highways, and freeways. And then as a result of the adopted comprehensive mobility plan, that plan identified additional needs, so those were addressed in the MTP update in 2012.
I'm going to stop you for just a second. Something came up for us to vote again on the minutes. If you all are trying, I think I see Dan trying to pull up a map. I think if you just X out of it, it'll take that box off of you. Oh, you don't have an X?
In the right corner?
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, Karen.
That's okay.
I saw Dan trying to pull up a map, so go ahead.
So for tonight's proposed map amendment, as a result of development and redevelopment within the city limits and within the ATJ, changes were made to the city's road network system. And these changes were documented over time since the last update, and they were documented annually through the Master Thoroughfare Plan annual reports. Another reason why you're seeing this proposal tonight is that the annual reports over the last couple of years identified that a need is there to amend the plan to reflect the changes on the existing map only. And the map changes that Tim will go through with you tonight, they reflect previous decisions from council. So I'll turn it over to Tim.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Tim John, Assistant City Engineer, and I'm glad to be back at the podium. I'll go through some of the technical items for the changes from 2012 to 2019. I will also have, just for your information, some more detailed views of each map, and they'll be fairly close to what's in your handout, but we'll go through some items and show you what has actually changed between the 2012 and the proposed 2019 Master Thoroughfare Plan. Probably the biggest few items I wanted to emphasize on comparing these two maps is since 2012, the city has annexed both Greatwood and New Territory. So we have revised this map to include the new boundary of the city limits, so that's a change. We've also had, we've gone through and slightly changed up the table of contents on this map, and again, I'll have a viewport that will show what these changes are. We've also had some fairly significant changes that we wanted to bring to you, your attention, and then we'll bring up later, assuming it's approved this evening, to City Council. But we've had some changes that were decisions made through some developments, and some of those have identified that I'll call out later, but some of the bigger ones are the closure of Wood Street on US 98. We've added the addition for the extension of Lexington Boulevard from its current extension through University Boulevard. We've also added the addition of Soldiers Field Court roundabout and then extension of Soldiers Field Court. And then we had completion of the LJ Parkway to Commonwealth and a roundabout there. And I will show you detailed maps of those. But I just wanted to kind of give you a comparison of the two here of kind of how they both look. So going to roadway classifications, this is one of the views that I wanted to bring to your attention is the hierarchy or the nomenclature of what we call our roadways. And the first one I'd like to talk about is freeways, and it's at the top of the hierarchy. And I like to use the freeways, highways, arterials and all that similar to almost to a vessel system, blood vessel system in the city where you have arteries, capillaries, et cetera. This almost is similar to that type of hierarchy. So a freeway is your major roadway, and it has full access control with no at-grade crossings for motorized travel only. There are on and off ramps, but there are no stoplights, there's no signals, it's truly intended to be a freeway that's uninhibited. And the one that we have through here is US 59. The next one that we have is what's called a state highway, and those include State Highway 6, also US 59, which is also portion of it, a state highway, US 90A, State Highway 99, and FM 2759. These are within the city's jurisdiction as well, but they're typically maintained by TxDOT. We do participate financially sometimes in either design or construction, but freeways and state highways are all managed by either the federal government or the state level, and we get involved with those. From the arterials down, we have what's called, arterials are along state highways, and they connect main road street networks. They're designed to carry large volumes of traffic long distances through the city. They do tend to have signals, stop signs, et cetera. That cannot be avoided. Even our state highways have that. But arterials are maintained by the city. That's our control. We control those design standards. We control the expansion, the width, the length of those, et cetera. And other municipalities around us have arterials as well. And then you have another subset called major collector and minor collector. And really these are kind of based on connections to and from arterials. And they typically, whether it's a minor or a major collector, really depends on the traffic volume that's generated, the width of the right-of-way, whether it is divided or undivided. It depends on the number of local streets that connect to it, and then whether it's connecting from an arterial to an arterial. Sometimes we have minor collectors that might connect arterials to majors. There's a very subtle difference, but we do have geometric design standards that differentiate the two. And I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but over here on the right are these different classification subtypes of the sections that go with each one of those. And every one of those letters represents something. I'm not going to go into the detail of that, but that's the hierarchy that we provide. But what we changed on this map is we've also included roundabouts. The previous version that we had in 2012, we either had one or no roundabouts. Since that time, we've had quite a few built, and we've also have quite a few proposed. So what we did on this legend was we went ahead and colorized the existing and future roadways to look a little bit more distinguishable, and we added roundabouts, both existing and future. And then, as I mentioned, the city limits and the ETJ changes. From a grid view perspective, I've broken the 2019 proposed amendment into these views. View 8 is the one I just showed you. It's the table of contents. So I've broken this up into views 1 through 7. Some of them do overlap, and I overlap them on purpose because I wanted to keep the scale the same when we go in and view each one of them, because I know these maps are really hard to read at this scale. So jumping on to view 1, this is an area that shows the north side, predominantly the north side of Sugar Land. And what I'm identifying here in these numbering system here is what has changed from the 2012 master plan. So what we did for number 1 is we've added, there is a future proposed roundabout at Stadium Drive and Main Street that actually was identified in a TIA that was done several years ago. It hasn't been built yet, it's proposed, it hasn't met the threshold. The second item that I show here is the completion of Crown Garden Trail. The previous 2012 version just showed it as future. So we have completed Crown Garden Trail since that time. The next item is view 2. I already talked about items 1 and 2, so I won't repeat that here. I would like to bring your attention to item 3, where we added an existing roundabout at Stadium Drive and Imperial. That was with part of the Imperial Redevelopment District. That roundabout was added. And then I also added a note about completion of South Stadium Drive. This commission had approved that plat a few years ago, and South Stadium Drive, I believe, was opened about a year ago, and it's fully functional. So that changed from a future connection to an existing connection. The next view, view 3, again, node 1, we've already talked about, that's the future roundabout. 4 is where we added the closure of Wood Street Railroad Crossing and Highway 90A. The reason that I'm adding it here is Wood Street is actually considered other, so it's not a significant piece of the thoroughfare master plan like the arterials and the minor collectors. But the reason I'm calling it out is it is a connection to 90A, and it was an executive decision through development agreements to close Wood Street. So I did want to bring that out. It's actually very difficult to see on the map, and you almost can't see it due to the thickness of the lines, but that Wood Street was closed, I believe, about 2 years ago. The next view probably has the most changes. Item number 5 is a future roundabout at the intersection of First Colony and Soldiers Field Drive, and we also have a proposed extension of Soldiers Field Drive through a city-directed CIP project. So we're planning, right now we're showing as a dashed green, which would be a future minor collector.
Yeah, Soldiers Field, I couldn't tell from these drawings. You got the roundabout, but you're going whichever way you're going toward 59.
West.
Does it go back and, will it go back and tie into Highway 6?
That's the plan. The plan is to tie into Highway 6.
But when you do that roundabout and that extension or whatever of Soldiers Field, you'll have a complete loop from 6 to 6?
Yeah, the driver of this really was to help the Sugar Land PD department, but there's also has been quite a few wrecks at that intersection now, so there's a plan to address
But
that.
ultimately, Soldiers Field will go from Highway 6 on the other side of the police department or whatever,
That's correct.
through the roundabout and all the way back out to Highway 6 at some place down the road,
Yeah.
down the way there, huh?
And when they do exit the future Soldiers Field Drive, it will be a right only on State. They won't be able to cross 6, but at least it is another extension. If they want to go north on 6, they would have to go down to the next signal and make a U-turn.
Probably at both ends, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. The next item, 6, 7, 8, and 9, we list those here because they are completion of these roads that were in Telfair, either Track 4 or Track 5. And we list them here because all they did was change from future status to current or completion. So I wanted to list all those out here. We added those names. Number 10 is probably one of the only major changes to the Master Thoroughfare Plan. Through negotiations and discussions with the Floor Project, we are continuing to recommend to show the extension from Lexington to University of the Lexington Boulevard. Right now, it is still unnamed, but we show it here as an extension connecting to University. And then number 11 is there has been a roundabout, it's called the Lexington Boulevard Oxbow Drive roundabout, so we're showing that as an existing roundabout.
I want to comment on that roundabout. That roundabout compared to the one up by the ballpark. This one is very, sorry. This one, the one at the ballpark on Imperial Boulevard or whatever it's called up there is great. You just smooth go through it. This one, you didn't build it wide enough or something. It's tight. I'll put it that way.
Okay, let's let him finish going through the presentation and save our comments till after.
Okay.
Yeah, after the public hearing. But write them down and be sure to ask about it. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so that's view 4. View 5 is more in the kind of the lower western half of the city. Again, number 5 and 11, they've already been called out, so there were no really other changes to this here, to this view. The next view 6 is in city's ETJ in Greatwood, but completion of a portion of Magnolia Trail, the Greatwood Lake. So and this really just changed from future to existing. There are future still developments coming in this portion, and we haven't really changed these layouts, so we left those as they were in the previous version. And then view 7, the last view is really the, I'm going to start with 14, 15, and 16. These are completion of these roadways, and they change from future to existing. And then number 13 is the extension of LJ Parkway to Commonwealth Boulevard, and that is an existing roundabout. So that was the addition that we added there. That was approved and constructed several years ago, so that's been in full force and operational. And with that, I'll hand the presentation back to Kieran.
Thank you, Tim. So for this item, all requirements of the public hearing have been met, and there were no public comments received to date. Sorry. So now we'll hold a public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. I will open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this issue. Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to consideration of and action on a recommendation for the proposed map amendment to the City of Sugar Land Master Thoroughfare Plan to the mayor and members of City Council. I will start with Carl, so you can go back to asking about your roundabout.
Well, I'm just saying that I think the one at the ballpark or whatever is great. It's got, you just flow through it. For some reason, and maybe it was, the one on Lexington at what you call the Oxbow or whatever. I mean, it's still a roundabout, but it's like you're creeping through a tunnel or something. It just doesn't feel the same. So I commend you on the one at the ballpark. I suggest if you're going to do another one, you improve it. Don't do it like the one you did on Lexington.
Noted.
That's just my, take on it.
Observation, okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Jay.
We approved a PD at Imperial, and I believe it had a roundabout at where Kempner comes out at Maine. What happened to that roundabout?
At this time, we haven't seen a lot of progress of that particular development. Yes, it is approved in the TIA, but if in fact that development comes through, our recommendation would be to come in and actually, we can either amend it or include that in future consolidation of our ped bike plan and our comprehensive plan.
We don't want to show that as proposed?
Well, it's questionable. I mean, it has been approved with the TIA, but we're really just waiting to see for the development of that project.
If I may.
Go ahead.
No.
If it's approved in the PD, that means the PD's got to be amended.
Correct.
So if it's shown on an approved PD, why wouldn't it be shown on here as a proposed roundabout then?
Well, we can, if this is this body's preference. These are the kind of comments that we'd be glad to take forward and add to the map.
I mean,
right now it's proposed, and obviously proposed
it's
can
been
change.
approved, the PD's been
Yeah,
approved.
right.
And it's not a matter of if that deal's going to do, Tim, it's a matter of when that deal's
Exactly.
going to be done.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's the feedback we're looking for. It wasn't an oversight. It's just that,
I forget, Jay, I'd forgotten, but where exactly?
Kempner at Imperial.
It's right down there,
That's the-
just north of 9EA
That's
on
that
Main.
connector, wasn't that the connector that goes to Wood Street to take care of that Crow's?
it would have been west of Wood Street.
Isn't that? Huh? Well, I can't see it on this map, it's so small, but that's the way that they were gonna connect from Imperial, whatever,
Yeah.
over to that to help.
And that's the feedback we're looking for. We can certainly add that.
Well, yeah, it was added because of it's already a bottleneck, the way it's set up, and they were looking at improving traffic flow.
Right.
Making Kempner an eastbound only, putting a roundabout in there, but of course, I was concerned it was so close to 90A that it would cause traffic problems, but it
Well,
was approved.
it's on north of the railroad. So it couldn't impact 90A, could it?
Well, I mean, it could impact the traffic at that intersection. I mean, that intersection's a mess anyway, without a roundabout. And people don't know how to drive in roundabouts.
That's why you need to make them bigger.
That's why the bigger ones work. Another question I had, Tim. At one point, I saw a second roundabout up there. You have a roundabout at where Stadium Drive ends at Main and Bernie. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I saw a second roundabout adjacent to it at Just Purtle and Main. And we're not showing one there. Did that go away? Did we never?
I don't think that was a final recommendation or approved in the TIA. That may have been a discussion at one point or as
Yeah,
an option.
I don't
but
remember where I saw it,
I
but
don't think two roundabouts within that vicinity would probably work too well.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead, Suzanne.
This is just curiosity. I'm looking at Eldridge, and it's pink, like a state highway or freeway instead of arterial. Why is that? I'm
It's
just
actually a
curious.
state highway,
It is?
yes.
Okay. that
It's an
answers-
I don't know the number, but it's actually a state highway.
Thank you.
1876? 18,
1876 is what I'm hearing.
Thank you.
FM 1876, yep. Okay, just getting back to Jay's point, I mean, I'm seeing a lot more proposed roundabouts here, and I'm just wondering how the existing roundabouts are functioning, because I share Jay's observation that a lot of people don't seem to know how to drive in a roundabout, and I'm just wondering if we're seeing accidents in them, or if they've been problematic, or if people are learning how to drive through them and doing okay.
I don't have that information. Actually, I would ask our legal staff if I can address that question for the thoroughfare plan, the operations of roundabouts. Would you like for me to follow up? Because I don't have that information.
It would be interesting to follow up, since we're proposing so many more and you're asking us to approve them, to approve the recommendation, I guess, to make the recommendation for approval. Just wondering how people are doing it, or if we're seeing an increase in accidents, or if they,
I can speak to it a little bit, just empirically, personally. I live just off Austin Parkway, and I've got a storage unit down there off LJ Parkway or Boulevard, whatever it is. So I use that one on Commonwealth, and it's a breeze. I mean, and from what I've seen, people aren't struggling with it. It works very well. The other one by the ballpark, of course, is very good. That one's,
You need to
And
do
not
them
only-
all like the one at the ball.
well, you don't have that luxury, and two, it's,
Don't do them.
you don't have the real estate, and then secondly, if the roads don't have that kind of demand, you're not served by putting in a bigger one. It has, just like the stop signs it replaces, it has its function and its diameter. So it's not just a question of bigger's better. Go to France if you want, if you
Well,
want a
and-
really
and
big one.
My guess is that at some places you might want them a little smaller as a traffic slowing, calming device. So, but anyway, that's good to hear that people seem to be adjusting, because that was a concern that we had when we were looking back at the first ones that we
Which is-
were going to go
The first
in.
one was at the ballpark.
Right, was at the ballpark. And now that I'm seeing many more future ones, it's good to hear that
I
they
think
seem to be working well.
anecdotally, I mean, the direction is from our executive team and staff is the roundabouts generally do improve, or we would not recommend them. That I can tell you. But for each specific intersection or how they have or haven't, I don't have that information.
Tim, I would suggest, no disrespect for the legal department, but I would ask that you get with the police department or somebody and ask that question of them as to how many, if they're having accidents, or whatever, I don't know. In all of the roundabouts.
That's exactly why we're doing number 5 on this view.
Exactly what?
That's why we are addressing a roundabout at point 5 to address, hopefully relieve some accidents and PD.
Well, I know that's the hope, but what about the existing ones? Have they had any accidents, or is there, is there?
Right. Yeah, I don't have that
That should
information.
give you an indication
Right.
if that one's gonna have them, or
Right.
something. I would think that would be part of the information gathering that somebody should do to do a roundabout, since we're
Right.
doing them.
Or definitely before you take it to the mayor and city council, to
Right.
have that information to show that they've been a good
Right.
addition to the
That's a good
thoroughfare.
point. Well, we can gather that.
Thoroughfare plan. So, well, does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Would someone care to make a motion? Or I'd be glad to.
I'll make a
Okay, go
motion to
ahead, Taylor.
approve, let's see here,
To recommend?
to recommend approval of the proposed map amendment to the City of Sugar Land Master Thoroughfare Plan to the mayor and members of city council.
Okay, would you want to include showing the proposed roundabout at Kempner and Imperial that's been
Yes.
approved? Okay. So a motion to approve, to recommend approval to the mayor and city council of the proposed map amendment to the city's master thoroughfare plan with the addition of showing the proposed roundabout that's been approved at Kempner and Imperial, at Imperial. Okay. Okay, so motion's been made by Commissioner Landine, seconded by Commissioner Canine. Is there any discussion? Okay, you go ahead and vote. Okay. Passes. We will move on to item 5, reports. 5A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Report to the City Council meeting held on May 28th, 2019.
So
Huh?
that was
Would be
me.
you,
I
AP.
had May.
Okay.
So the May 28th meeting was more of it was a workshop and closed session. Council listened to Rick Ramirez, who gave kind of a summary of the recently closed Texas legislature. What was publicly available after that was basically a review and a discussion of the 2020 budget and capital improvement planning and the long-range financial planning. What the minutes showed and what council discussed was 4 key consensus items to the city manager from a budget perspective. So first thing was to maximize revenue under the current rollback. The second thing that they discussed and recommended was an effective tax rate plus 3% and no planned tax rate increase in the fiscal year 2020. The third thing was to decrease fiscal year 2020 and capital improvement program capacity. And then the fourth thing was to consider a possible bond election in May 2020 for any new capital demand. So those were the 4, I think, key things that were shared from the budget planning discussion. And then after that, it was, they had closed executive session to discuss personnel matters, not personal matters, personnel matters. Big difference, right? I think, yeah, that was it. The personnel matters included employing the new city secretary as well as appointments to the Telfair Track 5 commercial management district as well. So those are the 2 personnel matters that were discussed.
So yes, congratulations, Thomas. It's good to have you as our city secretary. Okay, thank you, AP. And who was the liaison for the city council meeting June 4th? That would be you, Dan?
That would be me, and it was fairly uneventful so far as this body is concerned. There weren't any action items that concerned us. There was one recognition in particular that was really quite impressive. Young man, Taylor Wallace, out of Dulles High School, received the Valor Award. He's in the junior ROTC, and he's quite a accomplished young man in his role in junior ROTC, and he received the Valor Award. He was traveling with his parents. There was a storm, I think a dust storm. They were up in Lubbock or in that area, and came across an accident, and he rendered aid to the family that was hurt, and it was a pretty remarkable story. And there were just Hurricane Preparedness Week. There were some talks about that, but again, nothing concerning this body. And yeah, there was a little gathering just before welcoming the new city secretary, so that he was acknowledged as well. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We will move on to item B, city staff report.
Okay, good evening, Commission. At your place, you should find a lovely packet of paper for you. This is the latest supplement for the development code. So this reflects the changes to the land use matrix and the parking requirements and so forth that were approved earlier this year. So this is for you to incorporate into your development code, so to have handy. For your next meeting, which will be Thursday, June 27th, we are anticipating that we will have the CIP coming before you for review and recommendation. So that's the annual process of reviewing the capital improvement program. And then we are also anticipating a public hearing for a really unique plan development that we have coming forward for the Grants Lake townhomes that were unfortunately damaged by fire late last year. And so we're going through a somewhat of a unique PD process to get them up and running so that they can reconstruct. So that's for your next agenda. See you then. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Carl. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jay. All in favor? Aye. We're now adjourned.